Hello and welcome to the Sunday edition of the Daily News Simplified, where we have taken important articles that has featured in today's Hindi newspaper and also the important editorials and the articles that have featured in the past week in Indian Express. The topics for the discussion are listed on your screen.
Before starting today's discussion, here we have an announcement for you. The Prelims Mains Integrated Quality Improvement Program, which is going to start from September 2. And this program includes the comprehensive current affair classes, prelims and mains revision sessions, and more than 80 tests for prelims and mains to test your knowledge. And you will also get a personalized one-to-one mentorship. Get ready to embark on a transformative journey that will empower you with knowledge, skills, and confidence that is required to clear the civil services exam. Don't miss this opportunity to be a part of a dynamic and learning community and receive personalized guidance from experienced mentors. And the classes will also be in a hybrid model. You can attend it online or offline at Rouse IAS ORN campus.
Moving on to the first article of the day, the article has featured in the Indian Express on the date 28th August 2023. The article basically talks about the addition of new members to the BRICS. Now this article is important if we see the syllabus of General Studies paper 2, which particularly talks about the international organization. Now when the BRICS was expanded, we have seen what were the new members that were added to the BRICS. Now we'll try to understand that what basically is the deep level analysis of such an expansion of BRICS, what this expansion of BRICS means, what are the challenges that this expansion will result in, and what will be the impact on India. The first thing to understand about the expansion of the BRICS is that the BRICS grouping had decided to add Argentina, Egypt, Iran, Saudi Arabia, Ethiopia, UAE into the BRICS bloc. Now if you see the expansion, this expansion includes expansion across various continents. That is, the geographical diversity is there, as from the South American continent, Argentina is added. There is also representation of Africa in the form of Ethiopia and Egypt. From the West Asian region, Iran and Saudi Arabia have been represented. So the new expansion firstly signifies due regard for geographical diversity. Now we will try to understand the analysis of the expansion of BRICS. The first analysis of the expansion of BRICS is that it is now having the ability to arrive at consensus. Now BRICS as an organization has shown time and again that they can reach at a consensus where the old members of the BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China and South Africa, have collectively decided or made consensus to add new members. This highlights that the multilateral organization, that is BRICS, is still able to arrive at a common consensus and further wants to increase its relevance, where various multilateral organizations today around the world are challenged with the issue of infighting and are not able to reach consensus. So this was the first analysis of the expansion. The second is it will be helping in countering the isolation of Russia as well as China. Now Russia has been isolated and has been facing sanctions due to the war on Ukraine, and also China is also facing some kind of similar isolations from the Western world, particularly due to the advancement it has been making in the Indo-Pacific region. But the expansion of BRICS, which includes Russia and China as the prominent and key members, highlights that Russia and China can have now close cooperation with the new members that are included under the BRICS, thus provides them an opportunity to increase their engagement across the globe. The third analysis of the expansion is it will be used as a forum to resolve differences, because members having different interpretation are now the members of the group. For example, if we take the example of India and China. Now after the Galwan clash, there has been no formal summits between the leaders of India and China. But it was reported recently that on the sidelines of the BRICS summit at Johannesburg, the two leaders of the two countries met and discussed about the border issue. So it provides an opportunity to have a discussion over the bilateral issues. Not only between China and India, it also provides opportunity between countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, which has recently seen some kind of diplomatic peace which was brokered by China. and thus provides an opportunity to further strengthen on these diplomatic peace. It will also provide a forum for Egypt and Ethiopia to solve their bilateral differences over the Nile River. So this can be used in forum to resolve the bilateral issues also. Then this move of expansion basically highlight the salient rise or the salience of global south, as the expansion of BRICS will lead to increased weight and increased representation of the BRICS nation among the countries of global south, and thus give them a better collective voice and bargaining power with respect to the Western countries. The expansion also showcases dissatisfaction with the present world order, as it was seen that more than 20 plus countries have applied for the membership of the BRICS, and this highlights that the present multilateral world order is showing the issues of fissures and dissatisfactions from the countries, and basically they are moving for the membership of regional multilateral organizations like that of BRICS. Next is, it is a challenge to the US-led world order. Now, if we see the recent expansion, member countries like that of Egypt and that of Saudi Arabia are added. Both these countries were considered to be closely aligned with the US, but with China broking the peace deal between Saudi Arabia and now Egypt also joining the ranks of expanding under the BRICS, it highlights that the countries are moving away from the influence of US and realizing what we called as evolution of a multipolar world order. And at the last, this expansion also highlights the rise of China, as China is the only country which provides now a check to the dominant status of United States of America, and the expanded BRICS will allow the China to push its agenda through these countries and in different continents. So this was the general analysis of the expansion of BRICS. The next thing to understand is the challenges that the expansion of BRICS will result in. The first challenge is it will damage the cohesion and decision making in the BRICS. Now members with conflicting interests have now been added to the BRICS, and these members also have complex bilateral issues between them. For example, we have seen the case between Egypt and Ethiopia, years of rivalry between Saudi Arabia and that of Iran, and these bilateral issues can basically make the BRICS dysfunctional, as we can have earlier seen the example of that of SARC. The second major issue that this expansion presents is the BRICS is still an organization which is in progress. Though the BRICS has the ambition of challenging the world order, various institutions that the BRICS have created, like that of New Development Bank or for the formation of Contingent Reserve Agreement, both these organizations look very small, keeping in mind the demand as well as relative comparison with other organizations. The next problem that the BRICS expansion can face is that of the USA is deeply entrenched in the relations. Now USA is deeply entrenched in the relations because it is now developing good relations with that of India. Egypt has been an ally of US in the grouping, and Saudi Arabia is also one of the close ally for the US in the grouping. And this can result in basically factionalism within the grouping of BRICS, where countries like India, Egypt and Saudi Arabia can become allies of US within the grouping, and there can be formation of another faction between Russia, China and that of Iran, which basically have an anti-America stand. And last is, there has been failure of earlier efforts also. For example, in the past there were various efforts to create alliances which will basically check the dominance of United States of America, and this was seen an alliance by China and Russia. For example, the creation of new international economic order. But this new international economic order did not created any kind of credible alternative. So this is the issue or the challenges with the expansion of BRICS. The last thing is the analysis for the Indian interest. The first thing is that it will further the Chinese interest more, as China along with Russia have been increasingly isolated today in the world. They will try to create an anti-America grouping and produce BRICS as an alternative to G7, and this will create a situation which will be not good for India, as India is now closely aligned with the United States. Second is it compromises on the India's weight. China, when compared to India, has much more material strength in terms of economic power and also has much more strategic capabilities when compared to that of India. And China has much more sway over the newly inducted countries, whether it is the countries of Saudi Arabia or that of Iran. And this will decrease the weight of India within the grouping. And the last challenge is that it is a violation of equal weightage and the process of consensus. Now, BRICS were designed to reach the conclusions on the basis of equality and that of consensus. But addition of new members which have different economic and material capabilities will dilute the voice of equality principle. And this will again boost the position of China, which has much more capability in the bloc. So with this, we have seen holistically what the expansion of BRICS means in general. We have also seen what will be the challenges that this expansion of BRICS will result in. And at the last, we have also seen what will be the impact on the interest of India. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article has featured on page 6 of the Hindu and basically represents a pictographic representation. Now, the photo represents that as many as 48 snake boats have participated in the annual water regatta and basically talks about Aranmula Uthrattathi boat race. Now, this topic is important from the perspective of General Studies paper 1 and can be asked as a pre-pointer under the Art and Culture section, which is a recurrent theme in the UPSC prelims examination every year, and a question related to tradition and the state associated with them was asked by UPSC in 2018. We'll try to understand more about this tradition. Now, the pictographic representation is about the Aranmula Uthrattathi boat race. Now, it is basically a ritualistic tradition which is practiced. An event marks the anniversary of basically the idol installation which takes place at the Sri Parthasarathi temple. Now about this boat race is basically the oldest boat race which takes place in Kerala and it is held every year during the festival of Onam. Now we have seen basically that this festival or this boat race marks the installation of idol at the Sri Parthasarathi temple. And thus the boat race takes place at the Aranmula Uthrattathi temple in the river Pampa. Two things related to this festival or this boat race is also that related to Palli Yodam. Palli Yodams are nothing but the unique snake boats that is also represented in the pictographic, also known as Chundanvalam, and the Vanchipattu song. This Vanchipattu song is basically the traditional boat song known as Vanchipattu, which is sung while rowing the boat. The last thing to understand about this boat race is that during the race, the people participating in the race are dressed identically in white dhoti. So we have seen the boat race basically marks the event of idol installation in the Sri Parthasarathi temple. It is the oldest boat race in Kerala which takes place every year during the time of Onam festival and is taking place in river Pampa. The boats are called as Palli Yodams. And Vachipattu is the traditional boat song that is sung while rowing these boats. The next thing that can be asked in the prelims examination is about the Aranmula Parthaswamy temple where this boat race actually takes place. Now this temple is firstly dedicated to Lord Krishna. It is one of the 108 Divya Desams that are dedicated to Krishna, who is also worshipped as Parthasarathi. Another thing that is important about this temple is that the Aranmula Parthasarathi temple houses Thiruvabharanam, that is the sacred jewels of Lord Ayyappa. The next thing to understand about the architecture of the temple is that it is a simple structure which is made particularly in the Kerala style of architecture, and the walls of these temples are beautifully adorned with different murals which belongs to the 18th century period. The temple further has 4 gopurams or towers on the 4 sides of its outer walls. So with this, we have also seen the characteristics of Aranmula Parthaswamy temple, a temple which is basically dedicated to Lord Krishna, who is also worshipped as Parthasarathi. The temple is important because of Thiruvabharanam, that is, it houses the sacred jewels of Lord Ayyappa. The temple is built in the Kerala style architecture and has murals on the walls which represents the carvings from 18th century. The temple also has 4 gopurams or the towers on the 4 walls. So with this we have covered the cultural aspect of the Aranmula Uthrattathi boat race. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article has featured on page 8 of the Hindu. Now the article basically talks about the organization of G20. This article is important from the perspective of General Studies paper 2. Now the article mentions that all the Sherpas of G20 countries have arrived in New Delhi for the summit that is to be happening next week, and it also mentions that the Indian representative is confident of reaching a consensus between the countries, especially in the terms of economic issues. India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant had earlier also disclosed that various talks have been taking place and he is confident of forging a joint statement on economic issues. However, diplomatic sources have also revealed that over the past few months, various roadblocks were hit on the issues of Ukraine and also on the figures in billions or trillions on climate financing to be contributed by the developed countries that is impacting the progress. The article also mentions that there are differences between the developed countries and the developing nations over the language on increasing representation of the global south on the boards of international financial institutions like that of IMF and that of World Bank. So this is another issue of contention between the countries. And lastly, the same article also mentions that the G7 grouping has opposed the language on condemning the disrespect or destruction of religious texts or sacred books, and China has also opposed the Indian edition on millets, lifestyle for environment that is life, and the use of Sanskrit phrase Vasudev Kutumbakam. Now, if we have seen the prelims paper previously, you would have observed the questions coming from G20 repeatedly, and a question on G20 was also asked in the prelims 2020. So we'll try to understand G20 from the perspective of prelims examination. As in the past, we have discussed what can be the benefits of India from the G20. So with respect to the prelims examination, G20 was an organization which was founded in 1999 after the Asian financial crisis. Earlier, it was a forum for the finance ministers and the central bank governors to discuss global economic and financial issues. But the agenda was later expanded in 2008 after the global financial crisis that took place in 2008, or which is also called as the subprime crisis, and head of the states for the first time met in 2008 in Washington. And this was also the first statement of the question on G20 this year in the prelims examination. Secondly, G20 does not have any permanent secretariat or the staff of its own. Regarding the presidency of G20, we all know that India is having the presidency of G20 this year. But G20 presidency on a whole rotates among the various members of G20, where the members of the grouping are divided into 5 groups, and the division of the groups is mostly on the basis of region. That is, it has a regional basis of division of members in groups. However, there are also groups which does not follow any regional pattern. For example, that of Group 1, which includes countries like Australia, Canada, Saudi Arabia and USA. Now, to maintain that all the groups are perfectly balanced, each year one country from different groups assume the G20 presidency. So one country belonging to different group, that is the 5 groups of G20, assumes the presidency, and the presidency is supported by concept of Trioca, which means that the previous, current and the incoming president of G20. Now, the next thing with regard to G20 is the various instruments of G20. The first important instrument of G20 is the RIIG, that is the Research and Innovation Initiative Gathering. By very name, it is clear that the aim of this instrument is to enhance, strengthen the research and innovation collaboration among the members of the G20 countries. Next instrument is that of G20 Empower. Now, the concept of G20 Empower is related to that of empowerment of women, and it was launched during the Osaka summit of G20 in 2019. With the objective of welfare and the empowerment of women, it aims to accelerate women's leadership and empowerment, particularly in the private sector. The next instrument under G20, which is important and has been in news recently also, is that of space economy leaders meeting, and it was under the India's leadership for the fourth time ISRO is organizing the edition of Space Economy Leaders Meeting under the ambit of G20. Now, in the beginning of our discussion, we have seen about the term called Sherpa. So the G20 consists of two parallel tracks. The first track is that of finance track and the second track is that of the Sherpa track. The finance minister as well as the central bank governors, originally for which the G20 was formed after the Asian financial crisis, are the part of the finance track, while the Sherpa lead the Sherpa track. Now, the G20 process from the Sherpa side is coordinated by the Sherpas, who are personal emissaries of the leaders of the state. It is the responsibility of these Sherpas, who are basically working as the personal emissaries of the leaders representing these countries, to oversee negotiations over the course of the year, discuss the various agenda, and to prepare the joint statement and the communique that can be adopted later at the summit. And we have seen Amitabh Kant is the Sherpa for India at G20. Now, the another grouping that is in news sometimes is that of B20. Now, B20 first session took place in India in Manipur. What basically B20 is, it is the official dialogue mechanism between the global business community. It was established in 2010 and it is one of the most prominent engagement group within the ambit of G20, with companies and business organizations as the participants. Each year, the presidency of G20 appoints a B20 chair, that is an eminent business leader from the G20 host country, which is supported by the Sherpa of B20 and Business 20 Secretary. So, we have seen another important instrument and a grouping under G20, that is B20. And a practice question in this regard can thus be framed, which can be further asked in your prelims examination. You can try to answer the same in the comment section. The next important grouping within the ambit of G20 is that of GPFI, that is the Global Partnership for Financial Inclusion. Now, this is an inclusive platform, and the membership not only includes the member of G20 but can also include the member of non-G20 countries, which are required to carry forward the work on financial inclusion, implementation of G20 Financial Inclusion Plan, and was endorsed by the G20 in the Seoul Summit way back in 2010. In 2021, the G20 leaders have been committed to enhance the digital financial inclusion also, particularly for the vulnerable and underserved segments of the society. So this financial inclusion, also with the digital revolution that has happened over the world, in 2021 summit at the Rome, it was decided to include digital financial inclusion as one of the key and prominent agenda under G20. It is to be remembered that the World Bank Group has also joined the initiative as an implementation partner in 2012. A practice question in this regard is again framed. You can try to answer the practice question and comment your answers in the comment section. During the previous summits of G20, G20 ministers have recognized that poverty alleviation, food security, and sustainable food system are key in ending the hunger and to promote the social cohesion. Not only it will promote social cohesion, but it will also lead to community development and will reduce the socio-economic inequality. So basically it was realized by the G20 leaders that when the poverty is alleviated, when the food security is ensured and hunger is ended, not only it promotes social cohesion, but it also leads to an inclusive economic growth and sustainable development. And this was called as the Matera Declaration of G20. And again in this regard, a question has been framed which can be asked in prelims examination, which says the Matera Declaration is related to affairs of which international organization. The last thing to understand about G20 grouping is the Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable. Now, Global Sovereign Debt Roundtable is a platform which was launched collectively by the IMF, World Bank, and under the Indian presidency of G20. So basically, this organization becomes important because it was launched under the Indian presidency of G20. The aim of this grouping is to bring together the creditors and the debtor countries on the same table such that it can facilitate a depth resolution process. Again, a practice question in this regard, that is with regarding to global sovereign debt roundtable, has been framed and can be asked in your prelims examination. So you can try to answer the same. So this was all about the G20 grouping, where not only we have seen what was asked in the previous prelims paper, we have seen what G20 basically is. We have also seen the various instruments of G20. We have also discussed about the different tracks of G20 and discussed some of the practice questions that can be asked related to G20. Moving on to the next article of the day, the article has featured on Indian Express on page 3 on the date 1st September 2023. Now the article mentions here that High Court has permitted stem cell therapy for 2 kids with autism. Now this topic is important with respect to the General Studies paper 3 under the Science and Technology section. In an interim order, the Delhi High Court has allowed 2 children who were suffering from autism to undergo stem cell therapy for treatment of their condition. Earlier in the case in December 2022, the Ethics and Medical Registration Board has said that the use, promotion and advertisement of stem cell therapy shall amount to professional misconduct. The question arises with the use of stem cell therapy for the treatment of autism. Currently, the stem cell therapy is allowed to treat only for blood cancer, and the treatment for autism spectrum disorder is currently at an experimental stage only. In this regard, let us try to understand what basically are stem cells, what is stem cell therapy, the conditions of use, the challenges and the way forward for the same. First thing to understand is about the stem cells. Are basically unique cells that has the potential to develop into specialized cells in the body, and once developed they can basically self-renew, which makes them valuable for the therapeutic application. Now the stem cell therapy basically is the treatment which utilizes stem cells to basically promote repair, regeneration, replacement of damaged or diseased tissue within the body. So we have seen what basically stem cells are, and through this pictographic it is getting more clear. Stem cells basically are the special cells with amazing power to transform into any tissue or organ in your body, whether it is red blood cells, nerve cells, white blood cells in the form of liver tissue or that of making heart tissue. So it is their unique potential to develop into a specialized cell. It is very important for therapeutic treatment. And the stem cell therapy is essentially the use of various stem cells to prevent or treat various conditions. And these stem cells can be harvested from bone marrow, peripheral blood, umbilical cord blood, and also from a donor. So we have seen what basically stem cell has the potential of, and from which areas these stem cells can be harvested to repair, regenerate and replace the damaged or the diseased tissue within the body. So this brings us to the second part of our discussion, that is what are the uses of stem cell therapy. So the first use of the stem cell therapy can be in the form of regenerative medicine. Now under the regenerative medicine, the technology can replace or regenerate the damaged or diseased tissue, and this can particularly used for the treatment of conditions like that of spinal cord injuries, heart conditions, Parkinson's, and also with the lifestyle disease of diabetes. Stem cell can also be utilized to treat cell-based therapy. That is, they can be used to create specialized cell for transplantation, as it is seen today currently in the case of bone marrow transplant to treat basically blood cancer. Further, the use of stem cell therapy can be for the development of personalized medicine, and this personalized medicine will have the patient specific therapy and will reduce the risk of immune rejection, which is a defensive response of the body, and thus will further reduce the need for an organ donation. And last, the stem cell therapy can be used for drug testing and disease modeling, as it can be used to create disease specific cell models and help the researchers to better understand the disease such that new drugs can be created. And this will also reduce the need for what we today know as animal testing. But obviously there are various challenges also associated with the stem cell therapy. And the first challenge associated with this is the ethical consideration, meaning thereby the use of embryonic stem cells raises the ethical concerns, as during the extraction from the embryos, it can result in destruction of the embryos itself. The second concern or challenge is related to the formation of tumor, as in some cases stem cell can basically result in the formation of tumor if the stem cells started differentiating in an uncontrolled manner. The next is the immune rejection. Though the chances of immune rejections are low, but still there is a possibility of immune rejection even in the stem cell treatment therapy. The next challenge is with respect to cost. Now the stem cell therapy treatment is highly expensive in nature and which restricts the usage to only very few people or very few patients of the world. And last is the regulation. Though India has introduced national guideline for stem cell research in 2017, but the field of stem cell research is rapidly evolving and challenges may arise in their regulation and control. So this brings us to the last part of our discussion. We have seen the uses of stem cell therapy and we have also seen the challenges associated with them. The last part is what can be adopted as the way forward. The first way forward is to develop clear and appropriate regulation for stem cell research and product development. Second can be in the form of informed consent for trials and the potential risks that are associated with it. Third is developing affordable and accessible therapies. And the last is the international collaboration that is needing for sharing the best practices and the advancement that has been made regarding the technology for its responsible development and to avoid potential misuse. So with this, we have seen what basically stem cells were and what is stem cell therapy, what are the uses of stem cell therapy and the challenges associated with them, and at the last, we have also seen how India should proceed with regard to the stem cell therapy, where the motto will be that of regulation and not restriction.